wanted to share something today, some thoughts and insights that you might find useful about the known and the unknown. I think we can all observe that our minds want to know. We're uncomfortable to some degree with the unknown, and that only makes sense. I mean, when you feel that you know something, then you can be more secure, more safe, like you know how to drive a car, you know how to earn money, um, practical things like that to help you survive. But also, especially in a time of a great deal of uncertainty, especially like we've seen in 2020, 2021, with a lot of change in the world, a lot of restrictions, a lot of just uncertainty about where the future is going. Are we going to have this kind of restriction going on for years? For some people, they might be concerned they're going to have pandemics going on for years. It would be a health threat. We're concerned about, do we have to take a vaccination? Will we be able to travel freely? Will we be able to do all this and that? So throughout human history, this has always been an issue, trying to predict the future, especially in times of instability. So there's always been prophets, intuitives, we have tarot card readings, we have dreams, and all of that. And it seems to me that most often these things don't really turn out to be so. And I remember back when I studied sociology in college that there was this book called When Prophecy Fails. It was about a cult that had some predictions of the end of the world and so forth. And when it didn't happen, what did they do to sort of justify their predictions that it was going to happen on a certain day and so on? Well, they found an excuse. They moved the goalpost. They said it was going to actually be later, that kind of thing. And that's the kind of thing that the mind does. We've seen that happen this last year as people have predicted various dire things to be happening, especially in the uncertain period between the election and the inauguration, when it wasn't clear to some people, like maybe whether the election would be overturned and that kind of thing. And in times like this, especially, I think people are really inclined to do things like listen to prophets, to people that are supposed to have inside information, to channels, and there's a lot of channeling going on. We want to know what's going to happen. Nothing really much happened except for sort of what you might expect. So people don't know what to think when that happens. The mind is uncomfortable with the unknown. And yet the truth, if we look at it, is that we know extremely little, and it works out okay in spite of that. Just at the everyday practical level, most of us know almost nothing, say, about how this computer works, or how a car works, or how your digestion works, or how rules and laws work. I mean, there's so many complex details in life, both in human culture and also in just creation, in life itself, in the biology and the ecology. Honestly, we know so little about the present, let alone the future or the past. And when we say, I do know, that can be deceiving too. For example, I just have some friends, lately, they're saying, well, I just know, I have an inner knowing. And I understand how that makes sense, in terms of like if we're spiritually connected to the whole, maybe there is some level at which we know everything. People claim that in near-death experiences also, that they have this innate knowing and understanding of everything that's going on in the universe. And then there's, how do I know if someone else knows when they claim to? And yet, there's also, if you look at the field of psychology, there is the sense of certainty that people can have, and it doesn't necessarily correlate with reality. For example, there was a study done where people were asked, where were you, on the day that JFK died? And in fact, they had evidence because they had written things down in a journal, what they were doing, but they hadn't looked at it for some time. So they said, well, I was doing XYZ, and I was at such and such a place. And then they would present to, and I'm certain of it, then they would present to them this journal, this evidence of what they actually were doing, where they actually were, as written by them back at the time it happened. And they didn't really believe it, even though the evidence was right there in front of them. That and other studies like that, tell us that the sense of certainty itself is a feeling. It's not necessarily an indicator of the way things are. So it seems to me like it's wise to have a sense of humility in life. Another example, which always struck me, was raised in a fairly accepting, open way. Was raised as a Christian, but it was okay to question things. And I feel fortunate that I was given that kind of freedom to just question without any coercion, really coming from my parents or from any religious authorities. And so, from that perspective, then you can just look at things like, okay, looking at the Old Testament, if I were God, would I do those things? Be that punitive? Would I turn people to stone, from some minor infraction? Would I, advise, killing your firstborn or whatever? I mean, there's a lot of things in the Old Testament in particular that seem unsupportable, even by basic ethics. Well, I understand that a lot of people get a lot of feelings of confidence and feelings of certainty and feelings of stability and being protected by believing something such as the Bible, or believing maybe something that a spiritual teacher or a guru or a psychic tells them, or even, heck, just believing journalists and politicians telling you 24/7, this is the science, even though many experts may disagree. I mean, we have to look, is there an agenda behind all of this? So in this vast universe of much uncertainty and confusion, what can we really know? The only thing maybe that we really can be certain of is what we perceive at this present moment. Now, I grant you, that doesn't seem like a whole lot, to hang on to, and yet there's nothing quite as grounding and secure and present as just being here and now. And I really do get it when things get as crazy as they have, especially this last year in our whole world. We want to know what we can count on. We want to make plans. For example, what if we have to mask forever all over the place? And what if we can't ever take a plane ride again without getting the vaccine, or having vaccine passport, being surveilled all the time? The whole technocracy they're talking about that we could go into. Or the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. Well, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. What if the communist Chinese take over? I mean, there's really some evidence for these possibilities. And even if horrible things don't happen like that globally, there's always still just the usual things of life. You lose a mate, you lose a job, your business goes out, maybe due to lockdowns. So what it comes down to really is, where do we get our security? Do we get it from those things that are passing from form? I mean, we get a certain amount, we do sort of physically, but ultimately, all that kind of security is conditional. It's contingent upon what happens. So that's why it's really important in life, isn't it? I'm sure you've heard this idea before, to get in touch with the kind of security that's non-contingent, that's not conditional, that doesn't depend on what happens. And what is that? The way that I sense it, it's the closest thing that we can get to just being here now, just feeling that spacious presence that you feel when you're breathing, when you let your thoughts slow down or even dissipate. And underneath all those thoughts, those projections, even the sensations that might be unpleasant in the here and now occasionally, when we go past all of that and stay with it, we do find that there's a peaceful state, and it has a certain kind of ultimate security in that it connects us with the whole of life, and it helps to guide us through whatever circumstances we're in. Even in horrible conditions like Nazi internment camps in World War II, there were people who learned to do that, and some learned to be so present in such a, shall we say, godly state, godly sense of presence, that they were actually able to walk out. One woman was able to walk out of a camp right in front of the guards. So you never know what kind of miracles can happen when we're present. And what if we are all present in that way? What if all of humanity wakes up and learns to just dispel those negative thoughts, those fears, that I was talking about a minute ago? Not that they couldn't possibly happen, but just to kind of rise above them and dissolve them with our minds. I think we can really change the world that way, most of all. Is it certain? No, nothing's certain. It helps sometimes just to kind of go into your body, you know, feel your breath. I like feeling just a spaciousness, especially if I'm under a big sky like in Arizona here. Just looking around and feeling the openness of it all. Not the emptiness, but the vastness of it and the lack of boundary. Just that sense that you can have of merging with everything. And I think that really is what people are talking about when they talk about God, when they talk about just that sense of knowing that all is well. So there's two kinds of security. The first kind really is insecurity. It's contingent security. It's contingent upon outer circumstances. And it's necessary to have a certain amount of stability and security at a biological level. But it's temporal, it's passing, and it always contains a certain amount of insecurity. Things could go wrong. The other kind of security is a deeper, unconditional security. It has to do with who you are. It has to do with your connection with the sacred, with the field of all life. And no one can take that away from you. Once you discover it and know how to access it, that's something that is inherent. That's an inherent form of inner security. That's the kind of security that has enabled people to get through very difficult circumstances with grace and sanity. So all I'm saying is we can have our beliefs and all that. We can have our prophecies, our predictions, our analyses of what we think can happen. And we need some of that probably just to navigate life. What I am saying is I think it helps to just kind of step back and not be attached to those narratives, to those stories, to learn the skill of just being here now. And in that state, that's where we're actually most likely to get guidance, and to get that more unified field coming to us and giving us some indication in what to do that will keep us most safe. So really, in many ways, the known, where we think we know what's going on, gets us into more trouble than it helps us. So I'm just saying, let's be more comfortable with not knowing. There's always an element of the unknown, and that's part of the fun of this whole thing we could call the game of life. Let's take a minute and just try to experience that. Invite you to just settle into where you are. Take a deep breath. Let your body settle down. Let your mind settle down. And see if between thoughts, between sounds, you can get a sense, a feeling of a sweet, soft, spacious energy, a presence without boundaries. Just being the field, just being all of it, here and now. And in this space, just feel the sense everything's okay. It is working out okay, and it's going to work out okay. There's a greater force in charge. See if that feels right to you. And what's really beautiful about finding this unshakable source of security inside and returning to that, when you start getting a little concerned about the outside circumstances, when you go to that space of security, then your thoughts automatically become more positive, and you somehow do magically attract better circumstances. That seems to be really clear. And imagine now if we all, or large numbers of us, kind of went more and more into the space of security. And as we consider all the things that could happen in the world, and we hear the news about, what could be coming down the pike, we just stay in that field of security. That's going to create, is much more likely to create the positive world we'd all like to see. So let's take this lemon and make some lemonade out of it. Let the unknown be a joy, not a burden. Not something scary, but something magical. Take care, and thanks for watching. If you like it, please give it a like, share, subscribe. Nice to see you.